Okay, we are officially recording. So I will go ahead and turn it over now to Scott Bolinger from AppPresser. He's going to talk to us tonight about doing mobile apps with WordPress in a headless environment. So Scotty B, take it away.
Cool. Thanks, guys, for having me. My name is Scott. I am the co-founder of AppPresser. Been working with WordPress for about 10 years or so. I had like a premium theme company. I did lots of client work. I've also messed around with like GraphQL and React-based headless WordPress. But my day job is doing the mobile apps. And that's what I have the most experience in. Been doing that for about 6 years or so now. So I'm excited to talk to you guys about Headless, and I would love to hear your questions. And if you have them, just direct them to Jacob, and he'd be happy to answer any questions you have. So,
No, that was last month.
In fact, I think I have some questions for Jacob actually. So maybe I'll leave that as the last half of the presentation.
I believe those hours are billable at a.
Yeah.
Make the checkout to Steve's Ingot, and you're good to go.
Just send it to john@nineseeds.com. That's
okay.
So yeah, I mean, I unfortunately missed all the other presentations, and including Jacob's, but I have seen Jacob present before, so I know he's a smart guy. But I don't know what you guys have covered already, so I am here to talk to you guys about whatever you want to hear. Obviously, I can just talk about the stuff that I want to talk about, but I'm really interested to hear what you guys are more interested in. I know that we have probably a lot of people who are in different places in their, careers and in their knowledge of WordPress. Basically, let me just start with like what is Headless, just very quickly, so that we're all on the same page. So Headless WordPress would be using a separate front end that is completely detached from WordPress, and then pulling in data through an API that displays on that page. So for example, in the simplest sense, you could have an HTML page that is like, let's say in Dreamweaver, because I know that's the hot thing everybody's using these days. And you put some JavaScript on that, and then you can say make a GET request to your WordPress site, to the WP API, and say, send me 10 posts. And then on that HTML page, we can then take that data and say, put the title here, put the content here, and then do that for every time we have a post. And that will display, say, all of your WordPress posts in a place that's completely separate from WordPress. And then the advantages of that are we can say, like, cache that for offline. We can put it into a mobile app. We can do lots of different fun things with it. It can be really fast and performant, and it can kind of do things that you can't do with just normal WordPress. So you wouldn't have to like load up your whole PHP site, load up all of the like WordPress includes and all that kind of stuff every time if it's cached. Although if you're making requests to WordPress, you're still doing a lot of that stuff anyways. But so let's continue on. Mobile apps are pretty similar actually to dealing with a headless WordPress site. So the way that a mobile app works is going to be the same type of thing. It's instead of like an HTML page that's pulling in everything with JavaScript, it's it can be many different things. It can be native code. It can be JavaScript based app that is then wrapped with a framework like Cordova or Capacitor that can interact with native device APIs. But basically, you're pulling in WordPress data, you're displaying it in a separate template that has nothing to do with your WordPress theme or anything like that. You're just literally pulling in text, and then you're displaying it in the app there. And then you can do that with an app that's on your device in the app, downloaded from the App Store. And I'm going to show you guys kind of what that can look like. So it still uses APIs and things, and it can also, the advantage of mobile apps is that it can then access native device features like push notifications, be deployed to the app stores. There's lots of offline and things like that you can do with it, in-app purchases, lots of stuff that you can do with the mobile app that you can't necessarily do with the website, although there's a lot of crossover there. So like I said, you can do this with a variety of frameworks. You can do it with something like the Ionic framework, which is JavaScript based with Angular, React, Vue, whatever framework of choice. You can also do it with something like React Native, with Native Script, Swift, or just go straight up hardcore and write Objective-C and Java if you're really hardcore, which I am not. So the way that I do it is I build hybrid apps, which are basically JavaScript-based web apps that then are wrapped into a framework with Cordova, where you can access native device APIs and then deploy to the app stores. The reason I like that is because I know how to write JavaScript and I don't know how to write Objective-C. So that's what I do. In which way is best? I know like the guys at Zeek, they do fully native apps, and I don't know if you guys do hybrid apps as well, Jacob, but basically like native is kind of the gold standard. It's the fastest way to do it, but it's also the most difficult and the most expensive. So for me and what I make, I work with hybrid, which is still really, really great performance, but you wouldn't necessarily build an app like Uber with it if you have like millions of dollars and a team of 50 engineers. So hybrid apps are more like if you have kind of a smaller project and you want to get an app out the door and it still needs to work well, you can do that. And there are also very big apps that are using hybrid technologies as well that are like downloaded by millions of people. So it's kind of just like pros and cons of each. So
Hey, Scott, there's a couple questions in the chat.
Yeah.
The first is from Chad, and he's asking about the, like, how does it affect security for the site, like relative to running WordPress standard out of the box? Are there any pros and cons or benefits or negatives to headless with regards to security?
So regarding security, that's an important question. What you're doing is normally you're not modifying WordPress a whole lot. Like you're not doing anything that would be especially insecure. But so like, for example, the WP API is in core. Like every WordPress site that's updated has an API that is spitting out the data that you can just pull into a mobile app, like without any authentication or anything. But there are, if you want to say log in, like post a comment, or you want to like do logged in things, like I don't know, do an activity post in BuddyPress, or like in LearnDash, you want to like mark something as complete, you want to like view stuff that is attached to your user data, things like that, or register for a new site. That type of stuff requires authentication. So I would say that it is neutral on security. It has basically no effect on security until you start modifying WordPress to do things specifically for your app that it didn't already do before. So related to that with authentication, so we use JSON Web Token authentication, and Jacob, we haven't switched to WP GraphQL. I would like to. It's just too big of a like framework change for us at this point. So we are still using the WP API. It's for those people who are curious. WP GraphQL is just it's a different type of API that basically is a replacement for the WordPress API, the WP REST API, which is in core. So this is a plugin that you would add to your site, and then it's a separate API endpoint where you can get data in JSON format, but it just works differently. It's really, really cool. It's where you can send a request for only the data you want and get back only the data that you requested. It's a single endpoint instead of multiple endpoints. Has a lot of really big advantages. It did not exist at the time that we started AppPresser. I mean, it really was not even a thing until like a couple years ago. So we've built our framework on the WordPress REST API. But so as regarding authentication, let's talk about that. So when you have a headless WordPress site, you are sending requests to the WordPress site from your app, or whatever it is, your mobile app or your web app, and you are saying, hey, I want some data, like give me some posts. You can get the post, no problem, because that's public. But if you say, hey, I want like a list of users, that is not public information, and so you would need to then authenticate. You need to log in basically. So there's a few different ways that you can do that. There are ways that are built into the REST API, like as of WordPress 5.6, there are application passwords. And basically what this does is it gives you a way to to log in as a user into WordPress, and then to create a password for your app, and then to put that password into your app to say like, hey, I'm legit, I can get this information. So you could make your, whatever your password is, it's super long and jumbled, but let's just say it's 1234556. You create that in WordPress, and then in the app, it says, what's your application password, 1234556. And then your app can now send requests to WordPress and say, oh, this guy's legit, he's got a password. He can see like a list of users, he can post a comment. You can do whatever it is that you need to do that's authenticated. So the way that we do it is with JSON Web Tokens, which is basically where you send a WordPress or a username and password in the authentication headers of a post request, and then you get back a token, and then that token can be used as a bearer token when you're making API requests. And so basically, it's like you say, here's my username and password. You send that one time, then then WordPress sends you back a token, which is like a really long string of like letters and numbers. And then you send that every time. And so that way you're not risking sending your username and password every single time. But you have this token that then can be like, say there's a security issue or something, you can invalidate that token and say, oh, this person is like risky, or they shouldn't be validated anymore. You can invalidate that token. So as far as like talking about security issues, again, the only way that there could be security issues is if somehow someone were to kind of hack or use that token in the wrong way or something like that. Hopefully that helps with that. So push notifications. So Jacob's asking, how are we handling push notifications? Yes, they're a huge pain to set up. That's one of the big reasons why people want mobile apps, is because you can do something like push notifications, which is like, sending a text message basically to app users who have opted in to push notifications. You cannot do that with a progressive web app, which is just like a website basically that has some added capabilities. You cannot do that on iOS. So you can do it on Android using browser notifications, but you cannot do it on iOS. So it requires setting up extra like certificates and stuff, and then and sending it through a push server, sending it to Apple's servers, and we use Amazon SNS for that. Jacob, I would love to go into it with you, but I feel like I'm going to bore everyone to death if I go into this stuff. So
that's cool. That's cool.
Yeah,
Just curious.
Yeah, but no, it is. You can actually set it up with Firebase for free, and it just requires creating the push notification certificates and uploading them to your push server. And then you also have to have push notifications enabled on the app itself in your certificates for the app. And then usually you should be able to send those back and send notifications at that point. But it's one of those things that like if something goes wrong, it's really difficult to debug. And it usually is just like, just create the certificates again, because it's too hard to figure out what went wrong. And then the certificates expire every year for iOS. So yeah, that's one of the many things that is a huge pain with mobile apps. But that's kind of some of the problems we're trying to solve at AppPresser anyways, is to make that stuff easier for people. So another question is there a particular package or framework you recommend to help with the authentication? I don't know of there are services that you can use, like, let me just look this up real quick. I believe it's called, there's a service for OAuth. I'm blanking on the name. Auth0, that's what it is. So you can use a service like Auth0 if you want. That is like a single like a application for authenticating everywhere using like only their like OAuth flow. But OAuth is a huge pain, so I actually wouldn't recommend using OAuth at all. I would actually recommend using just maybe the built-in application passwords that's built into the REST API. You can just look that up. There's documentation on it. Or if you're doing like what I'm doing, where like you're building a mobile app and people are using that app and accessing your WordPress data, then you can use JSON Web Tokens. I think it's the simplest way to do it. And there's actually a password, sorry, not a password. There's a plugin called JWT Auth. If you just look that up in the WordPress repo, there's like a couple of them, and they work great for it. So, but you still like, there's not a like, here's a JavaScript snippet and then like install this plugin and it's all done for you. It's Headless WordPress is very much like you have to kind of piece everything together yourself, just because it's I don't know if I would call it new, or like there's just not a lot of people building like done for you stuff, because it's hard to do that, and there's also not a lot of interest. So, but let me give you an example. Let me share my screen here, since we're talking about authentication. Let's get into this, shall we? We don't have to stay here, but let's just start with this and see where it goes. Okay. So Postman, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Postman, but it's just like helps you do API calls. So for example, if in our Headless WordPress, what we're doing is if we make an API call, like a GET request to an endpoint like this would be like my website, my post. This is what we were to get back. You get like an ID of the post, you get the title, you get the content, and then in the, you get other stuff too, like the excerpt and the categories and stuff like that. And then there's some data that you can add into this as well. So then in our template, what we can do is, let's say like if you're using Angular or whatever, like most of them kind of look the same anyways, but so let's say this is like our HTML page. We could be like, here's our H2, we're gonna put like the title right here. This Jacob probably went over this kind of like JavaScript templating stuff with you guys, but you can put like the content here, stuff like that. So that's what happens in our template. And then we would put like a for each kind of thing, where it would be like, in Angular case, it's like ng4 equals like post of posts, like that. And then basically that would just iterate over all the posts that are in my data here. And it would be like for every one of these that has like an ID and a title and content, we would go in here and it would spit out the title and the content and whatever else I wanted to put in there, and then display that in my app. And then if we do this to show you what that would look like in a kind of finished version, I'll just kind of load up my app here. I don't have that new like M1 Mac, so my node like doesn't run crazy fast. So just bear with me on my dinosaur machine that I just bought last year for like twice as much as the new faster computers.
You need a Mac Mini, man. Amazing.
I know.
Amazing.
I know.
First
Yeah, you got
problem,
you got the M1 on it?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Oh man, I'm jealous. But I'm actually now I'm kind of thinking of waiting until the like second one comes out with the MacBook Pros, like the M1X,
Yeah, the
or
MX
M2 or whatever.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm mad because I just bought this computer like last year, and then they came up with all the new stuff.
Yeah.
It's annoying. So anyways, this is kind of what it could look like is, you have this would be like a template of what I kind of did, because I said like for every post display like a featured image and then a title and then a little excerpt. And then if you click into it, then this is a separate template, but then it's displaying like the content of the post or what have you. And then you can do stuff like add in comments and things like that. So what we also have is a login. So this is what the login looks like on the front end, where we have a login. So what we're doing is we're sending a request to WordPress now to say, hey, is that username and password right? Okay, if it is, then send me back a token and then log me in. And then once I'm logged in, I can view stuff like, in this case, it's LearnDash courses. So I can see like my course progress. I can go in and, like mark stuff complete, and it kind of handles my progress. I can like complete quizzes or submit comments, different things like that. In like BuddyPress, I can go in and view BuddyPress activity. I can, post activities to it. But I wouldn't be able, you don't want people who are not logged in to be able to post activity, obviously. So the way that works is if I send a post request and to my login endpoint, and I don't remember what that is offhand. Let me see. I think it's just, okay, yeah. So it doesn't really matter, but I think it's this. So post request, and then what I can do is in the, if you guys are familiar with basic auth, it allows you to send a, a header, which means that it can't be like sniffed, so it's more secure. So it allows you to send the username and password in the header, and then what it does is if it's okay, then it sends me back a request that says like successful, and here's like you're logged in, here's your user ID or whatever information that I wanted for the app in that particular case. And then in the app, I can say, okay, this guy is authenticated. So then when I make a request to like post to activity, then I send the token along with that request. I say like, hey, Scott wanted to post this to the activity. Here's the token. Then on WordPress, the WordPress goes, okay, that token's legit. Go ahead and post activity. But if the token is not good, then it will not post activity. And that's kind of how you keep things secure in this type of environment. And you can invalidate the token after a certain amount of time. You get a new one every time you log in, log out. You can keep tabs on those tokens if you want to like invalidate them for suspicious activity or whatever it is that you need to do.
Is there a, you said you're using JWT tokens or whatever, is there a plugin for WordPress that you're using that provides that functionality, or is there something else?
Yes, there is, and it's kind of old, so I think we're about to fork it, but I think we're using this one. So it hasn't been updated, but it hasn't really needed to be updated. So basically we're still using this, and we're gonna make some changes to it and probably create a new version of it. But what you do is you send the authorization header to the website, and then it gets you have a secret key that's defined on your site. And the way that it handles this is it uses the secret key along with your public key, which is the token you send, and it compares those two, like hashes them, and that's how it like decrypts and make sure that you're not doing bad things. And you can like validate the token and stuff like that. But here's an example request. It's in Angular 1, which is kind of weird, but you basically post to this token endpoint using the username and password, and then it'll send you back a token, and then like this. And then every time that you do requests from there on out, you can put the token in it's a bearer token. So you put bearer and then token, add it to the authorization header, and then that's how you get authenticated.
So this is something that like if someone was spinning up their own website, they would have this plugin installed in their website. And then that's what either AppPresser or whatever their other headless application would communicate with. This is the code that they'd be writing on that side of things, right?
Yeah, so this is all handled by the plugin. So okay. you wouldn't have to actually, the only thing you have to do is send the post request to WordPress once you have this plugin enabled, and then to the appropriate WP API endpoint, which in this case is this JWT v1 token, and then it will send you back the actual token itself. Okay. So a couple sticking points with this that we have found out. So the use case for this is if you are, say, building an app with AppPresser and you have like a WooCommerce store or like a LearnDash website, you are going to have the people who use your app are going to use these tokens to authenticate with your app or your website. Other authentication methods like OAuth or application passwords would be more like if you are using like I build an app and I'm using like Google login. So I'm going off to Google. I'm saying, hey, Google, I'm Scott. They're saying, yep, you're Scott. Then you send it back to the app and the app says, oh, Google said this is Scott. And so log him in. that's the type of flow where you would have like OAuth or application password, or like, for example, in the WooCommerce app where you can have like show your orders and stuff like that for WooCommerce. That's where you would have an, excuse me, that's where you'd have an application password, because you're like, I'm the admin of this site. I want to like see all my orders and like do stuff with them in this app. So then I'm going to go create a password that only I can use in this one app. That would be like an application password example. But for our use case, token just makes a lot more sense. It doesn't make sense for us to do those other like OAuth or anything. So a couple of kind of interesting things about token-based authentication is that if you were to, the token is not included in like AJAX requests. So we've run into some issues where like people have to log in and then they're validated, but then they run some code on the WordPress site that like runs an AJAX request, like WooCommerce checkout or something like that. And then that AJAX request is not validated because it is, it's coming from basically from inside of WordPress, and they don't know that this person is validated with the token. So we've had to like, create some fixes for that. There's just some quirks about stuff like that. But it works really well in general. So we don't have to stay on authentication the whole time. That's probably really boring, but I'm interested what you guys want to hear, because so for example, here's some things that we could talk about. We talked about authentication. I can talk to you guys about the WordPress side of things, like how to create custom endpoints and how to like send requests and get data out of WordPress into your app. Or we can talk about like the app side of things, like how to build an actual like the headless part of it, and then just like use the data from WordPress, like the JavaScript, the Angular side, the templates, all that kind of stuff. Or we can talk about like the apps, like how to submit an app to the App Store, stuff like that. So I'm curious if maybe you guys have already learned how to like create custom endpoints, and maybe Jacob has shown you like Vue and stuff like that, and you don't care about any of that stuff. Does anybody have any opinions on like out of those things where you would like this conversation to go, or should I just
All of the above?
All the above.
Just keep
All of the
going.
above, man. And
We'll
we can
cut you off
extend it, for the
tomorrow.
next meeting too.
Yeah.
You
Okay,
have so much to tell us.
You guys have like 12 weeks.
Yeah.
We can get
right.
everything done here.
So Jim had a question in the chat, mostly around like custom post types, I think, with REST, like how you would work with that. I mean, maybe talk about how you're working with that at all, if you are.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. So I have a blog post on this. I was going to look it up because that has example code, but let's see. Custom post. So custom post types are not in the, there it is. Okay. Custom post types are not in the WordPress API by default. So you have to add them. And they did that as like a security thing. They just didn't want to expose everybody's like products or their like, I don't know, secret custom post types that nobody's supposed to see or whatever. So you have to add those in yourself. So for example, let's use like events calendar is one that is an interesting one. Let's use that one for an example. Let me just pull this up real quick. Okay, share screen. All right, so for example, if you have the events calendar plugin, the events themselves do not actually show up in the REST API. So if you're building an app, mobile or web-based, whatever, and you want to get your events into the API, they are not actually there. So you have to add those. So the way that you do that is you can, you basically have to just register it. And I think, so this code is kind of old. Let's just look up the way that you're supposed to like register. Let's see, register. I should just ask Jacob. Jacob, is register post type args, is that the newest way to do this, or is that old?
I haven't done one for REST API in a while, but is that like,
why are you even here?
I can tell you GraphQL.
Yeah,
That's true.
so
Oh,
that
you're on
show and
GraphQL. That's
rest,
why.
the show
You're
and
like, this is
rest.
so basic, Scott. Why are you not on GraphQL?
So where it says show and rest on line 35 there,
Yeah.
that's the key of enabling it for the REST API. And then you can go and customize it with the other things that you have there, the REST space and controllers, to modify the output which you get there. But that is the good stuff right there.
That's the newest way. Okay, good. Because I've done this like 3 different ways, and I just haven't kept up on which way is the newest one. So register post type args. Basically, you're saying if this is a post type that's already been registered for, in this case, tribe events is the post type. You say, I want to show it in the REST API, so you add the show and rest equals true. These other 2 things are not important. You don't have to worry about those. But that is basically going to take a post type that's already been registered, say in a plugin, and add it as true. If you're creating your own post type, then when you register the post type, you just use the argument of show and rest as true, and that will add the post type to the WP API. So then at that point, what you can do is, in this case, we're using the REST base would be tribe events. So what I could do is go to my website and I would say WP JSON, and I think you would just go tribe events like this. Or no, it would be, I think in this case, it would be WP v2. Is this right? WP v2 tribe events, right? Because I didn't register, I didn't change the actual base of it. Yeah. So in that case, yeah, okay, thank you. So in that case, you would just add your post type on the end here, and then that would show up. I don't have that up on this site here, but that's what would happen. So now the next thing, when you add this to the REST API, is that it doesn't actually show, it doesn't actually have all the stuff that you want in there. Like it doesn't have the post meta. So in the case of events, you want like the event date, maybe there's like a price, maybe there's some type of special description that's not just like the post content. Because when you register this, you're just gonna get the WordPress post stuff, like the post title, the post content, the post excerpt, the categories, that kind of stuff. So if you want anything else, like for example, the event date, then you have to add that special to the API using that's in the post meta. So what you would do is use register REST field. So this goes in the REST API init action, and then using register REST field, you can add the name of the post type, and then you add a object. I don't know if that's the right word for that, but basically it's going to put that into the API as like where this is going to show up in your data. And then you have the actual data that you want to output in a callback here. So the callback is down here, and what we're saying is we're getting this data here, which is everything that's in the API request. It's going to be like the title and all that kind of stuff. And what we're saying is add to the data. I want to add something with a key of, in this case, it's post list below content, because that's how we do it in the apps. We have like a hook that you can hook into. And then what I'm going to do is get the post meta, which is in the tribe events, is event cost is the key. And then we're outputting like some HTML and stuff. And then when I go, if I were to do this, when I went into the API, I'm just going to go back to post here. What happened? WP v2. Oh, I'm doing a post request. That's why. Nice. So then what I would do is when I got this API data, there would be an extra key somewhere in here that would say like this here would be like my APPP post content, and it would have in my data for the event date right here. And then in my app, I could now use that. And you would have to do that for everything that you wanted in the actual, event, like data and stuff like that. So then in my template, I would go in here and I would say like I would put in like a paragraph tag or whatever you want to do. I would be like event date is post dot I did this weird, but it would be like this. This is what I had. APPP was my like special object, and then it would be like event, date, or whatever I decided to use for that thing. Then I could use that in my app. But until you add that in, that stuff is not actually going to be in there. So, I mean, other things to keep in mind with this type of setup are that, like, if you have somebody who, or if you want to like pay for events and you have some type of payment system, it doesn't work in the app. So you're starting from scratch because all you're getting is text from WordPress. So for example, you are not getting PHP processing of a Gravity form. You're not getting styling from Elementor. You're not getting, you know, JavaScript that runs Stripe checkout from WooCommerce or whatever. All you're getting is literally text. So that means that in the app, then you need to completely rebuild your everything, including like payment processing or event registration or whatever it is. You can link to the website to do that if you want. But if you were going to say, I want to build a mobile app and I want to like have people pay for events in it, then you are getting data from WordPress. And even if you have the event price, that means that then you need to build like, I don't know, like a Stripe checkout button that says, like launch Stripe checkout right here, you know, with the price of whatever event.price or, you know, whatever, however you're going to do it. Dubs. So anyways, complications of headless WordPress, as you guys may have known already, would be, you know, using custom plugins. So custom plugins are a big sticking point for, especially for people who are building apps, people who are doing headless. You know, a lot of times people kind of expect everything in the site to just kind of automatically work in an app. And also if you're building a headless site, it'll be, you know, be like, you know, I built this page with like Elementor or Beaver Builder or whatever. Why does it look different in the app? Well, it's because in the app, this is your page. It's not like Beaver Builder or Elementor or whatever. It's totally completely separate. That's why it's headless. That's why it's decoupled, because it's not using that stuff. So the same thing goes for if you have like a directory listing plugin of I don't know, cars, like for a car dealership, and then there's you list all the cars, like that directory plugin has to be custom built. Like you have to add all that data to the API, then you have to output it in the app. Then if there's like a buy car button, that all has to be handled completely separately. So it gets kind of complicated. So I'll give you an example of how we do this with LearnDash, which is, we've been working on this lately, so it's fresh in my mind. But for example, with LearnDash, you have, LearnDash is a learning management system. It has like courses and lessons, and you can like track your progress and mark things as completed and take quizzes and stuff like that. It's very interactive. So doing this all in a headless environment is challenging. Some of the challenges we ran into were that like the LearnDash plugin itself had an API, but it was incomplete. So we had to basically build onto the API ourselves, build our own API endpoints for a lot of stuff, because a lot of data would be missing, or it didn't, you know, it just didn't have the stuff it was supposed to have in it, and it didn't allow us to modify it very well. So what we did is built a plugin that goes along with our integration, and we basically added a bunch of API endpoints. And like, for example, to get courses, you know, it would be this LearnDash/courses. You can then go to the API and say, like, see if I can find this quickly. Yeah, so you can call our API endpoint then, which is this. And then what you find is this is what we needed in the app, which is like the content of the course, the featured images, and some of the meta, which is like how much it costs and stuff like that, which is how we display these pages. And then once you go into the course, then you have some other information you need. You need like the lessons and like the quizzes and maybe a mark complete button or something like that. So other things we had to do, we had to actually take, not only build our own endpoints, but we also had to build on top of the other LearnDash endpoints. So the register REST field that we just talked about, like for example, we added a callback to like get some data like this. Like if there's a video that needs to be embedded in there, we need to get the URL for the video. And so when we go in the app to the lesson, then we're able to, see the contents of it and see the video, mark it complete if we need to. And then so the mark complete button then sends a post request to WordPress, says, hey, this is like Scott, he's in the course, he's authenticated because he's got a token, which we already talked about. And then he's asking to mark this lesson complete. And then so they mark it complete in WordPress, and then we show it in the app, and it's all synced up between the app and the website. So do we have questions or anything so far?
Scott, okay, so you're talking about obviously you're adding, I guess, is AppPresser kind of a bridge between like WordPress from a like monolithic CMS kind of a system where you've got plugins and all that kind of stuff. Like, are you a bridge to incorporate some of that plugins? I know like a long time ago you were doing like e-commerce apps, and you were doing this LearnDash stuff. Like there's a couple more app like BuddyPress was one of them you mentioned. Like are you helping people with that kind of functionality, like to bring some of those existing plugins and bridge the gap between that headless aspect of it, like sort of, I don't know, like a middleware almost?
I wouldn't say that. We're more like a full, like an app builder. So it kind of does everything related to the app. We are building these like bridges, like you said, with APIs. Like we did a BuddyPress integration before BuddyPress had an API, and so like I actually paid Renato, this guy, to like build more of the BuddyPress API, and like we built our own BuddyPress API before that. And like there's, we've just been around before the API thing was kind of matured. So so we do have stuff that we do with this, but it's real specific to what we're doing. And so we don't build like open source bridge stuff.
Yeah. So with you talked about potentially using things like pricing for events, or obviously e-commerce is going to deal with payments and things like that. Do you run into any like issues with app stores and things like that when you're handling payments inside of the apps themselves?
Yes.
Is that like a terms thing, or like I think I saw that there were some apps that got taken down because they were trying to get people to buy directly within the app rather than using the app store for whatever.
Yeah, so that's in-app purchases. So the app stores are very, very strict on in-app purchases. So if you are selling anything that is digital or is used in the app or is like a subscription unlocking content, then it must be an in-app purchase. And they do not budge on that whatsoever. So for example, if you're selling LearnDash courses, or you're selling a membership to a BuddyPress community or whatever it is, it must, and it's $100 a year, you must create an in-app purchase for that. And Apple will take their 15 to 30% of those purchases, and there is no getting around it. Now you can still have the purchase on your website, and you can ask people to do that instead. You just can't redirect them from the app to purchase it there. And how like Amazon and Netflix get around that, I have no idea, but they must have some special agreements because nobody else can do it. So, I mean, if you are selling like a membership and you submit the app without an in-app purchase, they'll just reject it and say, put it in an in-app purchase. So, and that's a really difficult part because the purchases go through the app store. It doesn't go through your website. So if you have like, it doesn't go through like Stripe or PayPal or whatever you have set up. It like goes to the app store, and they don't give you very much data. Like they don't even tell you who bought it. Like, so they'll just be like, oh, here, you got a $99 payment minus our fees. congratulations. Like, you know, they don't tell you like who bought it or anything about it, but there are ways to, on our end, what we can do is we can say, you know, Scott is purchasing this, and like set that up in WordPress, and then put the purchase through the App Store. And if it succeeds, then we say like Scott bought it, give him the membership. And that way you can keep track of those type of things, but you have to do that yourself. So if you're selling physical items like, you know, t-shirts or whatever, then you don't need to do any of that. So like we have a WooCommerce integration where you can just purchase everything right through your website through like Stripe and PayPal or whatever you have. And there's no problems with that. It's only for like digital and, you know, memberships and stuff like that.
Cool. What are some, with specifically with mobile apps, like what are some things that you've learned over the years? Like you said, you've been doing this for quite a while now. What are the things that you've learned about, you know, having a mobile app built off of a WordPress site that are sort of, you know, things that you wouldn't expect to have learned, or things that people might get stuck with right away? Are there things like that that you can share?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest I've already mentioned, it's that people think that the app should just automatically look exactly like their website and function exactly like their website, when it just doesn't work like that. So that's a tough one, because they're like, I built the whole thing in like Elementor and I wanted the same design and everything in the app. And we're like, you know, that's a tough thing to do. So you have to basically redo everything in different templates. And then plugin integrations are difficult because like I was showing you with LearnDash, you know, it has all these features and functionality like mark complete and quizzes and lessons and topics and course progress and whatever. All that stuff, I had to like dig through the LearnDash source code and like build all that stuff myself. And so like doing like having any, and then they're like, oh, I have this plugin that like does, you know, this or that, and I want it to work in the app with my like custom payment gateway and all that kind of stuff. And it's like cool, well, do you have like $50,000? Like I could make that happen for you, you know. So but that's why we build these integrations. Like it's like we put all this effort into LearnDash, then a bunch of people can use it for LearnDash, or a bunch of people can use it for WooCommerce. Because if you were to pay an agency to do this from scratch, it's incredibly difficult and expensive. So ours is more of like an economy of scale. And I think I have some notes of, I wrote some other stuff too. Oh yeah, like App Store submission and certificates and stuff like that. I'll show you guys like the App Store stuff, which might be kind of interesting. Let's see. Okay, don't look at my password though. So submitting to the app stores is a pretty difficult one, although we have a really nice flow for that now, and we have not always had it. Other options. Okay. Let's see. Let me share this with you here. So I don't know if you guys have seen App Store Connect before, but basically this is how you submit apps to the App Store. So you can, once you pay for a developer license for iOS and Android, this is iOS only specifically, but you get access to the App Store Connect. So you can like add an app, you give it a title and a name and all that kind of stuff, and fill out all their questions and stuff. And then once you do that, it looks something like this, where you can add your screenshots and like a description, icon, in-app purchases, things like that. And of course there's, you know, like the app pricing, so you can sell the app or give it away for free. There's like all these like privacy things you have to do now, which is kind of new. And then you have to actually upload the build itself of the app. And so if you were building this on your own, you know, you'd have like Xcode and you can upload the archive to the App Store. In our case, we've always done it cloud-based. So there are services like continuous integration platforms that will, you know, build your app, compile everything for you. You can like run tests on it, and then it will upload directly to the App Store for you, which is pretty cool. So we have these like continuous integration platforms on our back end now, which kind of handle all that stuff for you. And then you go into the App Store and you basically fill out everything you need to fill out here, load up the build, and then submit it for review. And you can test it on test flight. And then on the Play Store is a similar type of deal where you just kind of fill everything out and submit it. So it usually takes a few days to get for Apple Review to get back to you, and rejections are very common, but rejections are not like you can't be in the App Store. It's like, hey, you forgot to like include this privacy policy, or you like have to use an in-app purchase here. So usually they're just telling you like you need to change some stuff up about your app, and then you resubmit it. It's very, very rare that you would not be able to get an app approved after making the changes that they suggest, unless it's something that is just by guidelines, like something that's not allowed in the App Store, like, you know, adult content or something like that. So then once you're in the App Store, people can, once it's approved and everything, people can download it, can send them push notifications, do all that kind of good stuff.
Cool. Tom had another question about, he said, what is the actual advantage of using WordPress as the back end of your app?
So the big advantage there would be to have a single source for all of your data. So if you are writing blog posts in WordPress and you have like WooCommerce products in WordPress, and you have, I don't know, a memberships community where you're releasing like videos every week or something, and they're all of that data is in WordPress, which is in your, you know, MySQL database, then you might as well just use that same stuff and have like your content team, or you, whoever it is, like as you write blog posts or release videos or whatever it is, it's going to update to your website, and then it'll automatically update to the app as well. So a lot of app solutions require you to like publish that content twice. Like if you have like a podcasting app, you know, you can release that podcast on your WordPress site, but then you also have to like upload it to the podcast cloud server and like release it there. And that can get pretty tedious, especially if you have a lot of content. So the idea would be to just kind of consolidate everything and make it easier to handle. And, you know, WordPress has a lot of great features too, like the login authentication stuff that's already kind of taken care of for you. If you try to build that stuff from scratch, it's very, very difficult. I mean, I had a kind of brief foray into building React-based GraphQL stuff, and like building our own, you know, if you try to build your own like user management system and login and authentication system, and like organizing content and building a back end to where people can manage that. I mean, like WordPress gets a lot of crap, but like it does a lot of stuff really well. I mean, at least decently well. And if you tried to build that all from scratch, it's like it makes you appreciate how much it actually does. So
Is there ever any instance where you'd use some of your content, you know, in your WordPress site that you don't display on your website and you would only display in the app? Or have you ever seen people do that?
yeah, for sure. Cause you might have like I'm trying to think of a specific example. Most people have it both ways, but they might have a page that's like maybe like a separate terms and conditions for the app, or like information about the in-app purchase. But you can, and there are instances where people do that, but it's kind of rare. Usually you would use both.
Okay.
I mean, a couple other just little things. Can you take your website and just kind of like plop it into an app and submit it to the app stores like the way it is? You used to be able to do that, but you can't anymore. Apple has gotten really strict on even apps that are built, like I built an app for a church guy, and it was really nice. It had these like sermons and posts and like videos and even like a donation page and all this kind of stuff. And it worked really nicely. It was all API based. It had a great design, and Apple actually rejected it because they said it like didn't do anything that the website didn't do. And we appealed it because we're like, well, it's like cached for offline, and it like has this great interface, and you can like favorite stuff, and like it really did a lot, and it was really useful. And they just were like, nope, the website can like display that stuff. So they're kind of sticklers on like, they really want interactivity in the app. So like posting content to the site, like with LearnDash, like Mark Complete, or buying stuff through WooCommerce, or posting to a BuddyPress community, or interacting, like having an in-app purchase and then like unlocking some content, stuff like that. And besides that, I don't know what, you can build all types of apps this way. Example, like podcast apps work great for this. Publishing apps work great for this. Like we mentioned, membership and news, WooCommerce, stuff like that, churches and chambers of commerce and membership communities, stuff like that. But yeah, I don't know.
What are some other features? I don't necessarily want to turn this into an AppPresser promotional content, but I know like early on, one of the things that was really like special about AppPresser was that you could like take photos and upload it into the apps and have that be part of the content. Like I think Apple's done some things to make webs be able to do that now, but like are there other things that you still can't do as a mobile website that you can do as an app that people might take advantage of in in building a WordPress site for that, like user driven content or things like that?
Yeah, the lines have definitely blurred a lot since we started this, 6 years ago. Progressive web apps can do a lot of things that a native mobile app can do. I mean, at least in terms of a hybrid app. I think what I've seen as far as functionality, like the biggest things that a mobile app can do that a progressive web app can't do would be like push notifications, especially on iOS. Being in the App Store is big for a lot of businesses. And then having like an easier download flow, like people know how to go to the App Store and download an app, but they are really confused about like saving it to their home screen on a site, and kind of less. Oh, I think my AirPods just went out. Can you guys hear me?
They totally did. Yeah.
Nice. Brandon called it. Nice. So yeah, so on top of that, you have like offline functionality and stuff, which you can do on a progressive web app. You can do geolocation on a progressive web app. You can do photos. You can't do in-app purchases, but like most people don't really want those anyways. So I think in general, the lines have blurred, but what I've found, at least with our customers, is that nobody really wants a progressive web app, or at least they don't know what it is. They don't trust it. Like they want to be in the app stores and they want to be on a device, and they don't want me to tell them that like they can just save their website to the home screen. So that's just been my experience. And I know that iOS specifically has been really holding back the things that you can do with the progressive web app, as opposed to Chrome, which you can do a lot of stuff. But I know that Safari is still holding back a lot of the features that are needed, and they're probably doing it on purpose. But I don't know, Jacob, do you have anything to add to that? You guys do PWAs very much?
No, we talk about them in theory, but I don't think I've ever met anybody that has installed a PWA on their phone. The concept is cool, right? But I think most users aren't going to know that they have to take those 3 or 4 extra steps to actually do it and realize what it actually does. Plus, I've heard a lot of issues, and I've run into issues with caching, right? So when you're PWA land, now you got service worker, and service worker means, if you update stuff, the cache gets all jacked up. So you're starting to introduce some other issues by trying to bring in some new features. So it's kind of kind of stayed away from that.
Yeah, it's like early days because there's like different browsers support different things, and then there's like weird quirks in Safari that are not quirks in different quirks in Chrome, and yeah, the like manifest thing, and I don't know.
Sounds terrible.
I think they're super cool, and I was like, oh yeah, everybody should just do PWAs, but like nobody wants them. It's weird. So I feel like now it's just a thing what web developers can like add functionality if they really need to, but nobody's like, you can't sell them because nobody's buying them, you know?
Mm-hmm. All right. Do you have any other thoughts, or does anybody else have any other questions for Scott while we have him this month?
I do, Scott.
All right, ready to go.
Yeah. You said, so on the app building side of things, right? I thought I heard Angular and something called Cordova. Can you speak to kind of the tech stack you're using on that side?
Yeah, so we use the Ionic framework, which is a UI framework. And then it was originally built on Angular, and now they're framework agnostic. They have like React and Vue, and I think even maybe just vanilla JavaScript implementations. But yeah, Angular works really well for building, I don't want to say large, but like building a project that needs kind of everything baked in from the beginning, like routing and I don't know, pipes and services and all that kind of stuff. Or I know like other frameworks like React and Vue also work really well. You just have to kind of add more stuff into them. Whereas Angular is like, it kind of already comes with the stuff that you need. And it's just worked really well for us. And we haven't had a reason why we would need to, you know, switch to anything else. Although I do really like React, especially React hooks. Or I really love React hooks, and Vue is always tempting to me, but you know, I just haven't had time to get into it. But yeah, so then basically any type of web app or JavaScript based web app, you can use Cordova, or Capacitor is a new type of thing. It's basically a bridge between the native device code and JavaScript. So they'll write plugins in, not WordPress plugins, but like Cordova plugins that are like the camera, the native device camera. It'll write all this, they'll have all the like Objective-C and Java code that will expose the camera to JavaScript. So then in JavaScript, you can say like, open the native camera, take a picture, save it to the device, whatever. Same with like geolocation, push notifications, everything that's on a device. And then Capacitor is like a newer framework built by the Ionic team to kind of replace Cordova. And they're making a lot of headway there, but does the same type of thing. It's just a bridge between the native device features and JavaScript.
Got it. So you guys are using Iconic, and then within Iconic, Angular.
Ionic, yeah. So
Ionic, sorry.
Yeah, Ionic is the visual.
I just think you're iconic. That's kind of a Freudian slip
yes. There. Thank you. I agree wholeheartedly. No, Ionic is the like UI components, and then it has some underlying like routing and like helper code. But Angular is like the main driver of that. Cool. So yeah, I mean, if there's any more questions, I'm happy to answer them. But
yeah, I'm not seeing anything in the chat at this point. If you have any questions and you want to just ask Scott directly, feel free to unmute yourself and go ahead and ask that question. We do have a little bit of time left here for questions and things. How about, Martin, do you have something?
I was going to ask, you know, Scott, if we want to get a hold of you, I mean, to run something by you, where can we do that? And if it's possible, I mean, if you're willing to do that.
Of course, yeah. Anybody except Jacob can email me at scott@apppresser.com.
Perfect.
Because Jacob, we have to go play golf. That's where you can ask me questions.
Hey, golf, count me in, man.
All right, let's do it.
Nice. I'm into it.
We'll take
It's been
Steve.
too long. We didn't have the WordCamp golf tournament this year. Last year, I
Yeah.
mean.
Oh, you didn't get the call? Oh man, sorry.
Ouch.
I mean,
Ouch.
no.
It means it'll be another year of my life I don't golf even once.
Oh man, John, you're gonna be even better when you come back, I think. You and Robert.
Oh, I can't get worse, right?
You and Robert just gonna be chipping in from 30 feet.
Just crushing it. Okay, well, I think I'm not seeing any other questions. Super good stuff. I think this is a good way to end up our series here on headless stuff. You definitely touched on a couple of the topics we've already done, which is great, and lots of new information here, specific to mobile apps and all that kind of stuff. So I appreciate you taking the time to join us and share your wisdom.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Thank you, Scott.
Yeah.